5.1, Dan Hensey regarding the 100th anniversary of Royal Canadian Air Force, request for proclamation commemorating the 100th anniversary. Somebody prepared to move that we adopt the proclamation?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. 5.2. Royal Canadian Air Force requesting council show support of the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Force by lighting up the building Air Force blue and sharing a photo on social media to show support.
Were there blue lights?
More than likely.
We do, I think we do.
So moved. So moved, Mr. Warden.
Seconded, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. 6.1, nominating committee. Councillor Vino.
Well, the nominating committee met. There were vacancies in 4 of our committees. You can see them listed in the table. And unless council wants to split something out, I would move the approval of the committee appointments for the Chester Municipal Planning Advisory Committee, the Village Planning Advisory Committee, the Heritage Advisory Committee, and Recreation and Parks Committee.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. Recreation and Parks, where are they? Items up, please. Oh, that's Recreation and Parks Committee, yes. Councillor Church, sorry.
Yes, we met on the 20th of February, and one motion came forward, and I believe that Chad is going to come and do a presentation on this, but to adopt the new active living strategy outlook for the Recreation Committee. So that was the request from the committee.
Yeah, and so we'll be on a future meeting, yeah.
Shouldn't we? We're not going to do it then now.
We're not going to approve it until we...
Get the presentation from the chair.
Yes, okay.
Okay, Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program, Councillor Connors.
Thank you. Business as usual. The monthly report for the month of January. I was a little late getting that in, so you'll soon have February's monthly report as well. But it's in front of you, or actually you've received it in your council package on the weekend. So if there are any questions, I would try my best to answer, and if not, I would find out from the coordinator herself and get back to you. But I'm guessing not, because again, it's business as usual. Great work by the committee.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, anybody? No? Now, my apologies for the Chester Arts Centre. I kind of just forgot that was a 9 o'clock presentation. But anyway, you're still here, so come on up.
Hello.
I saw the agenda earlier, so I was kind of expecting it.
Things wouldn't go exactly as planned, no.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us. I'm Rhonda McPhair. I'm the new Executive Director of the Arts Centre. I started actually with the Centre back in March, but as the marketing lead, and then took over as Executive Director in the beginning of October this year. So what I've sort of planned for today is just to take you through a quick overview of our highlights for 2023, touch on a little bit of what we have planned for 24, and then Buzz is going to give you an update on our building renovation project.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
You're welcome to have a seat if you'd like.
Oh,
Yeah,
wasn't sure if people are making me nervous.
no. We sat down.
Fair. Okay, so the focus of the Arts Centre continues to be on providing creative opportunities for all. One of the ways we do that is with our art kits. So in 2023, we gave out 420 free art kits. The majority of those went out through the Lighthouse Food Bank. And then in 2023, we also started giving them out we've got our little book library in front of the center. So we've been giving them out there as well, just so that more folks can just pop by and grab them. And then we give out some at the farmers market as well. So we will be continuing to do that in 2024 because it's been really popular and really fun way for the community to connect with the arts. We're also looking at different ways to sort of expand that into more locations in the municipality so that folks don't have to come into the village to get them. So that's in the works as well. Those are some photos of our lovely art kits. Last year, we also provided 44 Discover Art workshops. So that's our Sunday drop-in free all ages art programs. They're usually on the craftier side, family friendly, but still lots of fun ways for people just to come in and just play and create and get involved with their community and us. We've also been running our Creative Seniors program. We did 64 different Creative Seniors sessions or classes, and that was through 8 different sessions. So they sign up for a group of 8 classes, and it's a really great social opportunity as well. So we're planning a similar number for this year, and then this year as well, we're going to be doing an art show again with the Creative Seniors work. So the work that they produce in those classes, we're going to be putting up in the gallery. Another highlight from this year was our free summer art festival. This year's theme was 30 under 30-ish. So the focus was on highlighting work by local emerging artists. Not just visual artists, performers as well, different creators. It was a 3-day festival this year. It started on the Friday, ran through the whole weekend, and also included a art exhibition in the gallery, which ran for 3 weeks. We had 8 performances and an open mic event on our main stage outside. And then we also had a vendor market with 12 different foods, so that was a lot of fun, and some food trucks. And then the absolute highlight of that weekend was that we were able to provide 39 hours of free workshops to the community, so people could just drop in and try all sorts of different types of art activities. We had little felted personal flags, clay animals, blind contour drawing, solar dyeing in the Maritimes, ornaments, some like seeding workshops, plant dyeing. It was really a lot of fun. And then the art exhibition was a group show, and the themes were all around identity and mental health, and it included work by 10 Nova Scotian artists. In terms of the programming we ran last year, we did 41 different workshops. Some of those were half days, some of those were a full week. And then we had 7 camps and after school programs as well. Highlights from that, we did needle felting, we did large scale mixed media painting, paint nights, cyanotypes, watercolor, floral arranging, sculpting, just all sorts of stuff. And then this year we're planning on ramping up our children's programming. We've been getting a ton of requests. I've gotten phone calls and emails for more stuff for kids. So that's really going to be our focus for this year. We're not going to be dropping our adult programs, of course, but we're going to be bringing up our lineup of kids stuff. And yeah, our spring and summer programs are going to be launching next week or the week after, so early March. So folks will be able to sign up for all of our different programs that we have planned. And then in terms of our art exhibitions, we did 13 art exhibitions last year. Also had 7 artist talks. And we'll be doing a number more exhibitions this year. And we're going to be continuing to do a community show with Forest Heights, which is one of my favorites, to get all the high school students, like their first exhibition ever, and they come in and they're so excited, and their families come, and it's just an absolute blast. And then we're also doing an artist in residence program again this year. Last year we had 2 artists. This year we're bringing in 1, largely because of feedback from the artists that they would like their own kind of personal space. So we're really excited for this year's artists. They're going to be coming in May, and they're working on a really important project around Black history in Nova Scotia, and they're also going to be the first digital artist that we've had in our residency. She's going to be producing a 1 to 2 minute animated short. So that's the super speed highlights of the year. And then so next up we have our building update.
I'm Bunch Fraser, and let's see, I've been on.
You want to sit here?
I've been on the board of directors at the Art Center since 2009, and right now I'm
a little while.
No, the chair. I've got gray hair since I started.
There's something about that.
And now I'm the chair of the building committee, and so that started 2 years ago, and so I'm coming into the position a little faster now. So I'm updating you on where we are at with the original request for money to build an addition.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we've had a new strategic plan done by Calvin Brown, and he did a lot of research in the community, and found that most people don't know that the Art Center is the Art Center, all those little pictures of the Art Center, because it looks like a house. And we love it. We're the only people that know it's an art center.
Especially visitors.
Especially visitors. So the strategic plan suggested we improve the visibility of the center. And to do that, we hired Nicholas Lewin, a local designer, to come up with a grand scheme for making the center more visible as part of our addition that we will do. We have an addition planned for the rear of the buildings. Right now, for the last 2 years, we've been renting. You can pull out the hook anytime. Sorry, might be a little long. We've been renting space on 5 Pleasant Street for 2 years to run our classes. We've been trying to run exhibits and classes because we don't have enough space in the existing building. The strategic plan suggested we improve our visibility and our art center look, gallery look, in addition to making an additional space for classes and exhibitions. So these are the drawings, the schematic drawings that Nicholas has prepared for us to show what his intention was to improve the visibility, which is essentially putting a curtain wall in the front of the lower part of the building, where there is a wall now with a couple of windows in it, so that you can see, so that everything in the center will be visible from the street. The other concept of the building was to build a sidewalk up to the front door so that it will be totally accessible from the sidewalk. So it'll really become a commercial space in the village. And you can see that here. Oops. The sidewalk's gonna
Come right to the front here.
the sidewalk will segue into the front of the building. So this will be all asphalt. And you can be able to see what's going on inside, whether it's classes or exhibits. And we're calling that stage phase 1. And right now we've gotten quotes for that. And we're now fast tracking and trying to get it done for June. So, we're able to do that within our budget, and so we've got Nicholas has come up with some drawings to get quotes from contractors, and if everything lines up. And it's risk-free to be able to do this new front. We're going to have that done for July. If not in July, we're going to start on September 21st.
Yeah.
So it will be this year. Nicholas also provided a little fly around, but I'm not sure if that will show the phase 2 of the building, which is really going out the back, so that we can put all of our offices on one level and have classes and exhibitions all on one level and still maintain a lot of the backyard for our outdoor activities. And does that turn into a video? Who's ever doing the
It did in my original presentation, but
It
I
may.
sent a PDF as well, so it will be
original
fun.
presentation.
Okay, yeah, so it won't do the video thing. I could certainly send it.
Right, that would be fun.
Link.
There's Nicholas did a little fly around so you could see.
You get a really good sense.
It's much better
Yeah.
than just looking at.
Okay, send it to us and she'll send it in.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
That would be, it's fun. And the concept for the addition is so that it really is to make the Art Center totally visible, transparent, see-through, so that everybody coming up the street can see what's going on inside the building. And hopefully want to walk in.
Yeah.
And that's the idea of the back, so you'll be able to see through the back. Possibly not great for energy, but it'll be great for visibility. And that is my update for this year, and we'll be updating Chad in finally got around to talking to Chad, updating him with what we're doing, and we'll continue to keep in touch with Chad on that.
Thank you very much for bringing us up to date on what you're doing. You look busy, there's lots going on.
Thanks for having us.
You're all, for the most part, volunteers doing it, so, I mean, yeah,
Are there any
great. Thank you, Keith. Oh, sorry, Keith.
Thank you. Just to thank you. I know that last year, first, okay, so the building expansion, that's certainly under a major project, and thank you for the update. I know that we're gonna, kind of continue to hear about that. Especially, thank you in terms of the first annual update, official update, since you were added as a budgeted grant.
Yeah.
And I think that this, demonstrates to me, I'm sure to all, that that was a smart decision last year in terms of that investment, because it is an investment. So I appreciate the reference to the work that you're doing throughout the municipality, but as well, certainly it's okay to have a central location, right? Because we all know that, right? Whether it's the Chester Skate Park or the Chester Art Center and so on, right? And also our other gems that are throughout the municipality. So, but I really appreciate your update. And again, first year running through the budgeted grant. So yay to us, because I know that we've opened that discussion for some others for consideration this year as well. So I think it's a good decision. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. On to something a little bit more mundane. 8.1, first reading infrastructure charges relating to payment of infrastructure. No, it's exciting, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Some people will be mad, some people will be happy.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a normal world.
I guess, as for last week, this is the first reading and so on for the policy and bylaw, what's coming up. It's basically to have new developments pay for some of the sewer, so it's not subsidized by others. Everyone doesn't have to hook up right away. Their system's in good order if it's, too expensive to do so. I'm open to questions.
Well,
I just on, and I didn't go through it all, but we have obviously service lots in Western Shore that have been paying a third of the EDU unit price. So how will that, so if someone wants to develop, put something on there, how does that work for them?
Right. It depends on the amount of equivalent dwelling units, but if it's just a single unit property, then they're ready to connect, and it's $6,000 over 10 years.
Okay. So it's 6,000 over 10 years.
Yeah.
yeah, and this applies all across the municipality.
Well, that's what I was getting at, because I understand with new developments,
Yeah.
but I guess my biggest question is, because those people have paid an amount and not been, and that guaranteed them, from what I understood, to be able to hook.
Yeah.
So I just wonder how that's going to work. I mean, I know it's a new bylaw, and I'm going to get pushback. I know of some of them things that, because they're going to say, well, we've been paying EDU price all the time and haven't been using it. So I just want to know what kind of argument I can use to say, well, this is the reason why.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but that money was used to keep the system in good order and pay for upgrades of plants and things like that.
Just to maintain.
Yeah.
In short, we're gonna run new sewer now out, and those that don't hook up pay their 1/3, and they may not connect for another 3 or 5 or 10 years or whatever. At that time they connect, they'll have to pay their $6,000.
Yeah.
To them, the sewer will have been there for 10 years, just as your people have an aged system in front. But, not everybody connects exactly when the sewer comes by. So it always has to be a time of connection.
Yeah.
That's right. It's usually when their system fails, the cost of fixing the system is much more than that, so.
When they hook up, the 1/3 disappears.
Yes, it goes to one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, if we're a
But it becomes
triplex.
a
Yeah.
It becomes a full.
Becomes a full
A
EDU.
full charge, yeah. But there's a price to pay for having the ability.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll just comment on, I mean, I'll advocate for some people. I know the sewer that's going on Stamford Lake Road. There's some that have a great working system and have no intention of hooking up, and yet they'll have to pay the 1/3 rate.
Yeah, the
because-
0.3. That's correct.
I know, and that's,
Yeah, but down the road, hopefully when the system does have a problem, it doesn't. But
Or they
maybe
want to
the lot's
expand
big
their
enough, that'll
abilities.
be okay, you know, case by case basis for some of them.
I know, that's
Gives,
a tough
it
sell.
adds value to the property.
So how much money is 1/3 EDU? 200 on average.
Yeah, around 220, I guess in there. It's gonna be reset again this fiscal year, but we're hoping it's gonna be around the same or less.
And is it 220 everywhere in the municipality?
Yes, it's a blanket, everybody pays the same rate for the 0.3 and the 1. Which is a good way of doing it, just some
I
systems
thought that
are
was the
very
answer, but I thought it was
maintained.
important to be on the record.
Yeah,
You can't put this type of infrastructure in nothing without a person.
If you put in new, drive new sewer through and there was only a few connections, then the maintenance of that system would be borne by those that are already connected if we didn't have such a policy, so.
Which would make it impossible in a lot of cases
No,
to do.
that investment of that land would be basically supported by others, even though it adds value to their land. It's just it's the only way to address the inequity in supporting a system that, will add value to properties.
And bylaws are not perfect. I mean, you're gonna, you try to cover as much as you can, I understand that.
And if you
And
find,
you're always gonna be,
find you don't have it perfect, then you change it. You know?
yeah. And in some areas, even running the new lateral, even though they're not hooking up, will cost us more than $6,000.
Yeah. Which is borne by us.
Yeah,
Or
you know, hopefully the more people get on, make it reasonable.
Sometimes it'll be a little less, and try
Yeah,
to take the average.
Yeah, it all depends.
Absolutely, yeah.
So do we want to give, we would need to give notice of first reading?
Notice of first reading.
Somebody prepared to do that?
So moved.
Seconded? Seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Policy, same thing.
Well,
We need first and
Motion for vote.
as well. So there's the bylaw, which you just
oh,
gave.
so this is first notice infrastructure surcharge policy?
Yes.
And I need a first notice of the policy.
Yes.
Somebody prepared to move first notice of the policy. Second.
second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. So that was 8.1, 8.2 both done? Okay. On to 9.1. Corporate Strategic Management Year-End Fire Department Call Summary.
Bruce here?
I don't know.
Do you wanna go get Bruce? Do you wanna go to what?
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna wait for Bruce.
Okay, Bruce.
Because the next one's gonna take some time.
Yeah, Bruce just has to hit the high points.
yeah,
Bruce did most of this last
did.
week.
I know,
so you
I
really-
don't-
unless you-
I
unless
don't
you
even
want-
have a question.
This was the report that was missing last
That's
week
right.
from the agenda package. He presented it to you. But if you have any questions, you can come in and answer them. Otherwise.
I'm fine. It's just a motion to receive it.
motion to receive the report.
Second. Discussion, all those in favor? You can go back to work.
I didn't think I was on,
It was because we didn't have the report last week, so we put the report
but
in.
yeah, okay. Any questions on it?
No, we just approved it.
Okay.
They're done.
Okay. Oh, well, 9.2.
Sit back.
Gareth, how are you this morning? Chester Village Plan Review, second plan strategy, land use bylaw.
Yes, so, so we're back with draft 2 of the village planning strategy and land use bylaw. Just, I guess, as a very brief background, I decided this morning, rather than go through 50 or 60 slides and take an hour and a half like we did the first time, that I'd focus mostly on the changes since draft 1. But so just a quick little bit of background. As we all probably are aware, the process began in 2020 when we completed the municipal plan review. We started into the village.
Only 4 years.
That's right, we're getting there. The goal really from the outset was to update the plan and ultimately protect the look and feel of the village. That said, we did want to bring in a new sort of style of the document that would match the municipal planning strategy that was adopted, like I said, in early 2020. There's also new and emerging issues since the current plan was written. There may be some changes in community values, and then also just updating any regulations that were in the current plan, but that we thought could be more effective. So again, just a quick summary when we go out to the public, the presentation will be different than this one. We'll go through a more thorough review of the entire thing, all of the feedback that we've had so far, all the public engagement events. But this is really just focusing on what we did last summer with draft 1. So we released the draft in July. We had ended up having 4 public meetings. And then following those meetings, we had quite a number of phone calls, written submissions. There were a number of residents that came in and presented directly to council on their specific issues. Yeah. And so then in October, I brought back the What We Heard report. So that sort of summarized all of that feedback. And we went through a number of slides and topics at that point, and council gave some direction on certain things to change and certain things not to change based on that feedback. So since that time, I've taken all those changes and implemented those. We had a legal review complete. So there's been some minor wording changes and things like that as a result of Sam's comments. We still do plan to do an accessibility and formatting review before we prepare the final draft for first reading. That's looking at things like how a screen reader will read the document when it's moving down and those kind of things. So that's something we're planning. Once we get the text correct, we're looking to engage a consultant that can help us with that specific expertise. And then also in terms of just what's changed through internal staff review and discussions, there were a couple of items, thankfully not too many, that we realized were outside of our jurisdiction that we had to basically just pull back. So we'll go through those as we go. So this is beginning on the changes that we made. So the first one was one of the topics that we heard about the most. That was the proposed change to the minimum lot size in what is currently the estate residential zone, proposed to be the R1 zone going forward. So there was a lot of feedback on that, and council gave us direction to go back to the current 40,000 square foot lot size. So that is reflected there. The only change is that it's now shown in meters squared rather than in square feet, but it's the same size. So that's gone back. What we did keep that is new are some provisions for maximum main building footprint and gross floor area, and that was in part as a result to some of the comments we received during public engagement and the FBM architectural study as well. That showed that there have been some developments in the village that generally are seen as being too large, even for that zone, and so that's where those come in. But I think that the key piece there is that the lot size has gone back to what it was, whether it's a service lot or not, 40,000 square feet minimum. The next one, short-term rentals, and I know we heard a little bit about that again this morning, and I suspect there may be some further discussion on this one. So at the time in October, the direction was to maintain the proposed regulations. So the key piece there is that short-term rentals that operate in residential zones need the primary residency piece. So the owner and operator of the short-term rental has to live full-time as their primary residence on the property. That's the piece that's gotten some pushback, and we've had some comments and questions on that in the time between draft 1 and now.
No, I just so all we're saying is that it has to be a primary residence. We're not saying that you can't rent it out short term. Right. It's just that it has to be your home.
I think there is some misunderstanding there. We're not banning short-term rentals. What we're doing is regulating them. Yeah. Currently, we don't regulate them at all. And what's proposed here is that in residential zones, so in all the zones that are residential, a short-term rental use is defined. And I guess I think a comparison that we could make is we currently allow what we call home-based business in residential zones.
Yeah.
It's commercial uses, but it's very restricted and it's very limited. And it's in terms of the size, the floor area devoted to it, the number of parking spaces, whether or not, signage, all of those kind of things. So I would equate what we're proposing for short-term rentals to be similar, almost like a home-based business version of a tourist accommodation or a rental unit. So in the residential zones, you would be limited that you'd have to provide proof to the development officer that it was your primary residence in order to get a permit.
But you could move out for a week and let somebody.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And then just to finish that piece, in commercial zones, we view that short-term rental use the same as a hotel or a motel or any other sort of accommodation. So they're permitted. They don't have that primary residency piece. So it could be operated. You could have an apartment building that was purely rented out as short-term rentals in a commercial zone, and that would be fine. So
Andre.
I just want to say that I was really interested in some of the feedback we heard this morning, and gave me an opportunity to think about it from a different perspective. And there may be some merit in what we heard there, that maybe regulating through zoning this industry maybe not the appropriate way. And if we could, I'm just asking the question, I don't know that you're the expert. But if we zoned it so that it required a license, and then we created a licensing bylaw, it seems like that would give us the flexibility to modify that bylaw maybe a little more easily than opening up the land use one. Every time we have to, it just seems like that would be a way, because there's some sort of controls you want to put in place, but some of them I don't even know that we can foresee at this point. Might be a little easier to get at if we just broke that thing out, made it a licensing thing, and then as we gather more information on this emerging, it's an industry, as they rightly said, it's been around for some time, but regulating it in a way, we've heard arguments for and against short-term rentals, but there is a place for it, clearly. Yeah. So, I don't know, I'd kind of be in favor of trying to just basically in the zoning part, just saying that it must be licensed, and then pulling that out and then having a separate bylaw to deal with it. But that's just my thoughts.
I want staff to give me some advice on that. But I get that, for the most part, in the downtown core of Chester, those aren't affordable housing, so you're not protecting that. I mean, it's just the reality of life. And I do understand that, Race Week in particular, all kinds of people rent out places, and they leave the village because they don't want nothing to do with it, and they rent it out to those who want something to do with it. So I don't have a problem with that. I understand that. But what the best approach is, I know we have to control short-term rentals in some fashion. That I do.
Yeah, and I think, from my perspective, I think Councillor Vino is correct. The licensing bylaw approach would absolutely give a more fine-grained ability. It would allow you to punish bad actors and allow good actors to operate no matter where they are and no matter what zone they're in. I think that absolutely comes with a cost, and the enforcement piece, which I know was mentioned this morning, as we always hear, enforcing our bylaws is important, and there's sometimes a disconnect between how council sees that and how sometimes the public is seeing that. So, those are all considerations to make if we're going down that route, but it absolutely would allow us to, similar to like how we operate kennel licenses, for example, if somebody gets a certain, we can build in, if you get a number of complaints that are verified, then maybe you don't get a license for 5 years or indefinitely, or, so it does absolutely let us deal with problem properties and let ones that are operating without issues continue.
They're much simpler to change if things aren't working.
And that's right. You could tackle it as a single issue. So yeah, I think that would be it's definitely a possibility if that's the direction that council feels.
Derek.
Thanks, Mr. Ward. Thanks, Garth. I know how much work you've put into this, and we've had these discussions before.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see this final draft because I'm concerned that we do not have a good definition or any definition of primary residence. Mm-hmm. I think, I think the way it is right now, it's too restrictive. You have to, a lot of people may have this as a second home, they're only here for a short time of the year, and they rent it out during the, but they live in the property for 3 months, does that make it their primary residence?
So you're right.
Can they have a second property and still have this as their primary residence? Can they designate this as their primary residence?
So you're right. The definition around primary residence is something that we have thought about and struggled with to some extent, and it is not defined currently. It's basically left that evidence must be provided to the development officer that proves that it is your primary residence. We've talked about some of the things that could involve, but we haven't found one single sole piece of evidence that would be the perfect catch-all for that.
If you don't have a definition, how can you come to a conclusion?
Well, so I think as in many other cases in our bylaw, the bylaw sets out generally regulations, and then there is, in some cases, interpretation that the development officer, and she is the one, in our case she, is the one who interprets that bylaw, and that's a part that staff do with all of our bylaws. There is an element of interpretation, there's policy to guide us, and there's regulations to be read to the letter of the law, and then sometimes there is interpretation.
If we removed it from the land use bylaw and went with a policy piece, that you wouldn't even have to deal with that issue.
A policy
Potentially.
piece to have a
If you did
separate.
a land use, or if you did a separate bylaw.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Unless you regulated primary residence
Right.
through that bylaw and then dealt with it then.
Yeah, Adela, and then.
I'm not finished yet, sir.
Oh, sorry.
I sort of got hijacked there. I need more certainty. I don't want the development officer making a judgment call. I think people that have these huge investments need some certainty, and I think that's too uncertain. So I'm not happy with the lack of a definition. What we have now, with no definition, in my view, is too restrictive. I'd like to look at the licensing as an option. There has to be regulation, we all agree with that. And whether 1 week is the definition of short term, I don't think anyone wants the weekend partiers. I don't think that's what we're promoting. But we also have to appreciate some people have made an investment, a significant investment, based on the present rules, and to totally prohibit it without any certainty, I think is a mistake. I'd also like to be able to this is going to go to a public hearing. I mean, of all the issues that we've dealt with over the last couple of years on this, I think we found a pretty reasonable consensus on most of them. This one we haven't. And I think we agree with that. Both sides have compelling arguments. And I haven't read all Lizzie made a presentation this morning. There's a whole bunch of others that came in that we haven't even seen yet. And I expect more will come at the public sessions. And I also want to take this back to PAC and get their input into this, because PAC, that's the Planning Advisory Committee, they haven't seen this yet.
Right.
So I'm not prepared to sign off on this yet.
We're not looking for that today.
No, I understand,
Okay.
but I just want to get it on. Anyway.
Okay, Adela?
Yeah, I guess my only question is, and I don't, I think, was the intention for short-term rental to try to get more affordable housing? Well, if that was the intention, that's obviously not the case. So I don't know, do we need regulation? Do you have bad actors? You talk about bad actors. I don't know. I mean, the people that are in the business know, are there bad actors in the Airbnb business in the village or in the municipality? I don't know. So are we creating something here that we have to manage? Are the Airbnb owners or operators in favor of more regulation? I just think it's something we might just leave. I don't know, to me, if the problem for us is to try to solve the housing crisis, this is not even in our mandate, because it's not workable. That's the view I have. So I guess I I would just leave sleeping livestock and dogs lie.
It's not an option in my view.
Yeah, no.
Not an option.
And that's not regard to, we directed them to.
And just to respond to that, because there was, so this is not solely an affordable housing issue, absolutely not.
Not at all.
What it is, and to the question of how many, problems are there, I don't think there's a whole lot currently, but there definitely are scenarios where it takes up. And we've even had people that are supportive of short-term rentals saying, yeah, we just forget about race week, it's obviously a problem, but outside of that, it's not a problem. So I think the sentiment we're hearing is it's not a top priority problem, but there definitely are issues. Where I come from it is a land use. We regulate all other kinds of land use. It's a commercial use. We regulate all other kinds of commercial use. So from my perspective, that's why we should have some regulations. I'm not saying necessarily they should be these, but we should have, that's why, just like any other kind of business, and like I said, the home-based business example, if somebody had a hair salon in their home, we have rules around how large that space can get, how busy it can get because you're in a residential area. So it's the same thinking as to why we should tackle it. Thankfully, we have not had a situation where a numbered company comes in, buys 5 homes on a street, and rents them all full-time 100% of the year, and comes in and turns them over, but doesn't care what people are doing. Thankfully, we haven't had that, but that is a possibility. It's happened in other municipalities and other cities, and so that is another reason to, like I said, regulate it as a land use. But yeah, the level with which we do it, whether we do it through a licensing bylaw, which, like I said, will give us more flexibility, that's up for discussion.
Sam?
Yeah, okay, I think we're talking about short-term rentals in commercial areas. So if we're gonna go to the licensing bylaw, we would be licensing those in commercial, or they just as of right. I think there's that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, okay, but the main issue is in short-term rentals in residential areas. That's the major problem. And if we're gonna license those, there's a lot of attraction to going to licensing, then the residence issue only applies, I'm assuming, if it's in a residential area.
Correct.
It wouldn't have to be a resident if it's in a commercial area.
Correct.
So then I just think we need to come up with an idea of what kind of substantial connection should the property owner have to that property. It may not be their sole residence or even the one they spend most of their time in.
Right.
But we're trying to address the situation you just mentioned where a person or a company just buys it for the sole purpose of doing short-term rentals and never occupies it at all, or only does a nominal.
Right.
Then that's maybe what we're trying to address.
It's a hotel with me.
Right. Which we generally wouldn't allow in a residential zone, and that's the thing.
And the kind of rentals people, I've heard people talk about in Manchester historically has been people with, that's their summer home.
Yes.
And they rent it other times to raise additional money.
Right.
That's
I
a
have,
different thing altogether.
okay, I have Tara and then Tina, just because she is.
Yeah, so I don't think we're gonna figure out what a licensing bylaw is, but.
No, you have to take a
like
look,
today,
see
but
what
it sounds to me like council might be interested in looking at that. And rather than trying to say, that they have to have a license and put that in the land use bylaw, I think how difficult is it to remove all of that? Just go status quo of we're silent on it in the land use bylaw, and then potentially get direction to bring that back to council as options for a licensing
Similar
bylaw
to
and a discussion around.
We have a caveat in there about mobile vending, is subject to the mobile vending bylaw and isn't regulated here, so we could do something very similar.
Like that. Would that be difficult to do before you?
Before we go to the public, possibly, but I think we could say that is an
that's the intention,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
what we're gonna do. And
It seems like a reasonable approach.
Yeah.
Tara, Tina?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I was really just going to, echo Andre's comments when he started here. I really did appreciate the feedback, the public input today, especially. And I like where we're going with this, so I'm fully on board with that in terms of taking it out of, where we are in terms of taking it to the public and so on, and the fact that we're going to recognize it, or possibly recognize it, we're going to work towards that. I have a question around the entirety of the municipality. and the primary residence piece.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work in the entire?
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to-
No, I think I know the answer.
It doesn't
Correct.
apply. Yeah. Yeah.
So recognizing, Councillor Wells, his comments around the fact that people have put a lot of love and care and energy into these properties around, that applies throughout the municipality. Unless I'm wrong on that, that applies to the entirety of the municipality in terms of the neighbors and the community and the character and the peace of mind and so on. So, yeah, I guess I'm starting to recognize the fact that we're including the primary residence, but only in the village.
Right.
But not,
I think if we, Tina, if I can, I think we're heading down the road of dealing with short-term rentals in the entirety of the municipality. So the one good part about this is if we do it through a licensing piece, we can use that everywhere.
Yeah, it could expand, or it could have different, could apply differently within the village as it does in, absolutely.
Yeah,
Have that, all that flexibility.
Which is how we have the outdoor burning. We have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Very much
depending on,
so,
but the licensing, once we get down that road, we can use that to deal with it everywhere.
perfect.
Now, who else was next? Did you? No, you're done? Oh, Jerry?
One last question to follow up on what Sam said. I agree with that. If we can establish, there's a couple ways to go here, but to make an accommodation. What would the connection of the owner to the property be? How long do they have to live there? I used the 3-month one. It doesn't matter. But if we could define the connection, so we stop what we're trying to stop is that someone may be coming in and buying it for exclusive Airbnb. Having a ghost hotel in a residential area is not what we want. So you have to have that connection to the property, and I think between that and licensing, I think we can find an accommodation, but.
Maybe, I'm not sure how far we're gonna be able to go down that route, and that is, again, the trying to stop a ghost hotel in a residential zone to me is a land use issue. So, I'm not sure, but like Tara said, we're gonna have to explore those options, so I can't guarantee
You have
that.
to define the ghost hotel, and that's what we don't have here. We don't have the definition. Then go back to that. Anyway, we've had the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Yeah, I think they've just got to explore what this all means and where the challenges are.
And frankly, we'll be looking to make the amendments to this document, and the licensing bylaw will come next, because my priority is to get this thing
Absolutely.
finished. Yeah.
But short-term rentals are an issue all across Nova Scotia.
Right, yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, great, that's good. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the next one, so this is one of the examples of something that we felt pretty good about, but unfortunately we've had to pull back. So that was the corner vision triangle. This was requiring folks to keep clear sight lines at intersections. Basically, because we don't control the streets, it was deemed to be something we can't enforce. It's a Department of Transportation responsibility. We could only enforce it on our municipal streets, and our municipal street bylaw already has regulations about vegetation clearing, so it really isn't worthwhile. So we've just removed that out of the draft.
What they can't enforce it.
Yeah, exactly. It was, so some other changes from the October session. So we do have provisions now that retaining walls of 2 meters or greater do require a development permit. And if deemed necessary, the development officer can require a geotechnical report. That was a result of some discussion here in October.
I would make that mandatory, just because it's a safety issue.
That make the technical report mandatory for every.
Yeah, it's 1 meter in Halifax.
Right. And, yeah, okay, we can take a look at that. We also have, as a result of the discussions around the commercial agriculture piece on Old Trunk 3, the property that was discussed here at council a few months ago, we've made some changes so that shipping containers, if they are fully clad in appropriate siding and roofing materials, or if they were, say, placed inside of another structure, they would be essentially viewed no differently than any other structure. We've had this discussion in a number of ways over the years that, like, we prevent shipping containers, but you could build a 10 by 40 foot wood structure.
Just make them look like the.
And so as long as it meets our architectural siding and roofing materials, and again, that was in support of that request for Old Trunk and Target Hill. And going along with that, the direction was essentially, so what we've done is we've said that livestock operations, so that's anything over that 6 chickens, which is allowed everywhere, has been combined in with this new commercial agricultural use, and it would be permitted in the outer area, so that's basically Highway 3 and out, through a development agreement.
Yeah.
So that's, pardon me?
What about roosters for that?
The Brewster, well, those aren't in your heads yet. The next one, we've expanded the stormwater standard so that this now would apply to anytime there's 3 or more dwelling units on a lot, and for all new commercial and industrial development, they're required to meet our stormwater standard in the land use bylaw. That was in there before, but the triggers for it were a little bit higher, I guess. We lowered that. We also did add an exemption for very small additions of 20 meters or 20 square meters or less to existing buildings, that you don't have to, if you were going to add a porch or a new step, that you don't have to provide a whole new stormwater plan for that.
Makes sense.
Architectural controls. So there's a series of tweaks to the architectural controls that we've provided. One, which is, I guess, kind of an architectural control, somewhat related. There was some discussion around if there were buildings in an area that were exceeding the height limit, that new buildings should have some flexibility to sort of match that existing. So we put in a new provision by variance that allows you to exceed the maximum height by 10% if there are 2 other buildings within 75 meters that also exceed that height limit. So it's pretty specific, and the 75 meters is nothing particular. That when you look at blocks in Chester, that picks up most of a block. It would pick up a property across the street, and that's the thinking, is that if you're on the street looking around, this provision is intended to let new buildings fit in with what's already there. We've added a minimum roof pitch for multi-unit residential buildings and commercial buildings of 2 and 12 within the architectural area. So that was something that was just missing before. We had roof pitches for single unit and 2 unit dwellings, but commercial buildings and multi-unit residential typically would have a more flat type roof. And so this would ensure that they still have a sloped roof, but should fit those uses.
It's pretty darn flat. So
Yeah, it's almost.
we want to be able to create those square buildings here.
Well, there's example. We have some examples of commercial and we have some examples of commercial and other buildings in the downtown core that are at or exceed the height limit and have a low roof slope. And I know we've had discussions as well that typically for a commercial and multi-unit, if you required a 4 and 12 pitch, they're going to be way above the height limit. Like it's going to be.
So where are you allowed to do this?
So this is in the architectural control area, and then again, it's only for multi-unit and commercial buildings. Single unit and 2 unit buildings have a separate height calculation based on that steeper pitch.
So this would allow those buildings to go up to 3-story with a flat roof.
It would allow them to go to the maximum height, yes, which.
I see this is not an area we want to go into personally.
So before this, there was nothing.
Yeah, I think if you're going to go below a certain pitch, then you have to have a lower height threshold so that developers can't be advantaged by putting a flat roof and then getting an extra story, because it'll drive if you're a developer and if it's a business, it's going to drive the desire to maximize your unit count, and to do that, potentially you're going to end up with a lot of like Sackville Drive kind of looking buildings here, and I think that will be very, very bad for the architectural control. That's exactly the opposite of what we want to control.
So not a change. So currently, the pitch provisions only apply to single unit and 2 unit buildings.
Yeah,
So this would actually be more restrictive than what we've got currently.
Well, yeah, I don't care about current. What I care about is going forward.
Right. So we should require a 4 and 12 on.
No, I don't think it has to be. I just think
Just a little bit more of a pitch.
If you're going to go,
Please tell me what that is. So 4 and 12 is no, 2 and 12 is no. Are we 3 and 12? Like.
hang on a second.
I'm not into that.
Hey, listen, I have the floor. Just relax. So, I don't think that if you're building a building for the purpose of making a multi-unit building, you should be advantaged by making a flat roof, because it's actually contrary to what the character of Chester is. So if you're gonna make, for some reason, a flat roofed building, you should be limited at a lower height limit, I guess that's what I would say. So that you can do it if you want, but it's not gonna give you extra units.
Should that also apply to commercial buildings?
Probably.
So, okay, so just to be clear, the Forecastle, Wells Lamy, those buildings would not be able to be recreated. The Playhouse, none of those buildings would be able to be recreated today.
But I think.
And if that's okay, because this is what this was directly aimed at, was allowing recreation of what we consider classic streetscape in Chester.
Yeah. But
So we're moving away from that.
those buildings are well above it, and like in the case of Playhouse, that has a pitched roof. Mecklenburg has a pitched roof. It doesn't have flat roofs. Like
Right.
I realize where Ankle Vocals is. That's got a flat roof, but.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's an easy change to make if that's what counts as.
I just don't think we want to encourage flat roofs, and I think that this gives a benefit to the developer to create. Stop that, Brad. It gives an advantage to the developer to create flat roof structures, and then it sort of by gentrification will end up with more of those structures. I don't think we want that.
This is a little, so we're not really looking for direction, but we took direction on short-term rentals, so I'd just like to have a consensus if that's the direction.
I think we can look at options, yeah.
Well, I just, what angle, like, you mentioned our building, my building. What angle does that have? I have no idea. It's a low pitch.
It's less than 4 and 12, but it is a pitch.
It is a pitch.
Right, and so that's, frankly, it's approximately 2 and 12, that's where.
That's a 3-story building, so is the idea to eliminate 3-story buildings?
Yes.
I think
that's proposed.
Well, you can create like 2.5 stories potentially by creating like a typical like New England style where you have dormers in the roof structure that creates the kind of more classic style. If you're going to create a 3-story building, that's how you sort of do it. And otherwise, you get walls that are 3 stories high and then a flat roof.
I mean, we do have, anyway, my intent here is not to argue really, I guess, for or against, just to explain. We do have provisions on varied massing for larger structures, so it's not just a flat wall. We have provisions on, windows and all those kind of things. But yeah, so currently in the architectural control zone, what it says is for single and 2-unit dwellings, they're subject to this table that has different height limits based on the roof pitch. All we have to do is say all structures in the architectural control zone are subject to that, rather than this 212 exemption. So it's a simple change to make if that's.
I think we'd have to do the mathematics on it. To actually find out with that slope, can you create that 3rd story, and does it advantage the developer to just build straight wall? Yeah, you can change the veneers and stuff and pop them in and out.
Yeah.
Are we going to create basically like 3 floors of wall, and then just from the street, close, it won't look like there's a roof there at all. It'll just be walls and then the sky. And I don't think that's the classic Chester look that in my opinion, I'm not an architect, I'm just a guy. But I think that's kind of what people sort of think of that New England style.
Derek, do you have any comments?
No, as much as I understand it, I agree with it. I mean, it's not my area for sure. So I guess my question would be, what change would you be suggesting that Garrett make in the draft?
I think we might have to do just some simple geometry calculations to see at what slope do you basically get a bonus floor by creating a low slope roof. And then at that, you want to make sure that any slope that is flatter than that, or that flat or flatter than that, then you would have a lower height limit. So you can't crank your roof up to almost flat to get an extra floor out of it.
Tara?
If council is not interested in sort of putting regulations in that would prohibit a 3rd floor, And what we're saying is you need the ability to have a lower pitch, and your concern is the flat facades. Maybe you look at something less, if it's 4 and 12 or less, then you need to have a dormer requirement in there or something like that, rather than lowering the overall height. You look at the architectural, what are you trying to achieve? What you're trying to achieve is the massing piece of it. You deal with the massing piece of the building and require dormers or setbacks of that third floor or something like that.
I guess, I know maybe it'll cost us a couple bucks, but we had the consultants in to help us with this. You know, can we pick this little chunk out and just go back to them and ask them what they think about this, and in terms of like the character of Chester, how does this relate?
I believe that's where the 212 came from, but I can confirm that.
Well, all right, I'd like to.
Or we can get a new opinion, second.
Well, let's just find out, because that's a concern I have.
Okay.
What do we want to do? What's the rest of you think?
Well, let's keep.
No, it's in your area, you write whatever you want, I don't.
No, I mean, if Sid were here, I'd ask him, so now these are Sid questions, not my questions.
Yeah.
We have some buildings already in the buildings like this, are they brought up as an issue or a concern, or you, I hear the places, is your office similar to that?
Apparently, I don't know what pitch is.
Well, that's it, I don't really.
Pitch, but I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to change something that I don't even know if that's part of the character of this village, they already have these buildings here.
Well, I think that's why we did the architectural study. What they're saying is there are several buildings, Mecklenburg might be another one, that is like that. So I think that's why they made the suggestion, but I think we can go back and review it and look at the intent of what we're talking about is the massing and the facade piece of it, and with dormers helping there, we can do a little bit more.
Yeah, that's all right. I just know that we're 4 years in, we soon got to take something.
Yeah, what's the heading?
I know, this is really a contentious thing, and I'm really excited about this architectural control, because this sort of like Chester character, if there's such a thing, it's very important to people, but it was really hard to define it. And this is part of what we're trying to do here. And
Okay, so they'll take a look at that. Yeah.
Is the law office 2 and 12, you think?
It's in that range, I don't know.
Yeah.
Get up on the roof when you get back to work.
the trick is, like, there may be a building or 2 or 3 even that has something, but it's fine. But if if there's a benefit to the developer, and then we start getting a whole whack of those things, it may change the sense of character.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
If it's just a few, it's just sort of like, it's just an accent.
Yes, Gina.
So my question would be is, what did we hear in terms of feedback? Because it's not just about us here at this table, but it's about the engagement and what we've heard to date. Again, I could have my own personal thoughts here.
So this particular piece on the 212 in particular is new since this was here in October, and the reason being, this was one of the items that staff realized was missing.
Okay.
That if you were a single unit or a 2-unit home, there's a table that says how high you can be based on the pitch of your roof, and we realized beyond that there actually isn't any pitch provisions.
And just trying to add something.
So we put in something. So to answer your question, we haven't had specific feedback on that particular piece because it hasn't been.
But the public didn't recognize that in terms of...
Oh, Carol. Sorry.
Somebody open the window. There is a breeze over there. Oh, Derek, the floor is yours.
No.
Yes.
So we haven't tested that specifically. I don't think we necessarily heard that it was lacking or missing, but it may not have been clarified or specified at those sessions.
So again, I'd be interested in terms of the public, in terms of those impacted, if you will, but as well as our PAC committee. So
This will go to PAC.
yeah, so maybe I
Leave it alone until they come.
haven't been in the public audience as for one of our PACs for a long time, but maybe I'll be in the audience on that night. So thank you very much.
Sure. Derek?
Just one last question. We did get a letter from Sid DeMary, who is an architect, on some of the architectural issues. Did he address this one in his letter?
I'm not sure. We received dozens and dozens of letters, which I all read, but I unless you have the quote or the,
Not very long.
I don't have that in front of me.
Well, we can ask him that.
Yeah.
He's not PAC, we can ask him about
Yeah.
Right on.
PAC.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
he did write a letter on the architectural
Yes.
control piece,
Yeah,
That's good.
and I didn't know if he'd mentioned it,
yeah, and I don't recall it off the top of my
and
head.
I don't either, so. We go back and review that time. Yeah, we have to come back maybe after PAC, we get some more input, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we're done here, it goes to PAC, it goes to the public, and therefore they may, whatever we do.
There still may be changes to the document between the time it goes to the public.
Well, that's the purpose of the public hearing.
That's right.
Presumably, at the public hearing, we can hear something that will change our mind. I mean, that's the purpose of the
I know,
public
that's the
hearing.
reason, yeah.
The only caveat to what exactly you said is sometimes when we send things that aren't fully thought through and it goes there, it's like, what the heck do that council? They don't have a clue what we want. We're just trying to avoid that.
That's why I asked. about the
That's
public
why we
input.
were going through this for the last 2.5 years.
Yeah.
You, 2.5 years for me, 4 for you.
So what do we want Garth to do?
Just trying to get it right.
I would say I have notes to look at the licensing bylaw option and the architectural piece for the commercial. That said, I would say maybe we should continue because depending on how many changes there are, I'm wondering if my slides at the end about where we go next, I think we need to have that discussion.
I know,
We need to decide if we're taking a draft to the public or if we're making changes before we do that. So maybe we can continue and then we'll see how many items we have to look at. Okay, so continuing through architectural controls. So again, based on the discussions in October, we have now prohibited the use of metal siding, concrete block, unfinished concrete, and stone veneer or fake faux stone. The only exception for that would be when the building code requires non-combustible materials. And in those instances, they still have to look like a traditional material. So maybe you could use, a concrete shingle, but it would still have to look like a traditional shingle material. We've added an accessory building height limit of 6 meters. That comes from the existing document. It was just kind of like the 212, just something we realized hadn't been was missing essentially. Accessory structures, similarly, this is a carryover. Accessory structures over 20 meters squared need to comply with any relevant architectural provisions. We've added a provision to clarify that dirt, stone, gravel, and other aggregate is not an acceptable replacement for softscape, so for grass lawn areas. That was a discussion we've had a couple of times here. We've removed the prohibition on metal and vinyl siding outside of the architectural control areas. So next we will look at some map changes from the first time. So the black arrows are sort of just generally to indicate where these changes are. Most of these should be familiar and a couple will be new to you. So I guess starting at the top left, the McDonald properties, which I'll call along Highway 3. So Luke McDonald submitted a letter to council and we reverted those. They were proposed to be R4. We've gone back to highway commercial, so that's reflected there in the light pink or purple color. Similarly, to the right, PID 60093-572, adjacent to Peterson Lane, that under the current plan was split zoned. It was proposed to change to R4, and the owner submitted a letter asking council to revert it to highway commercial, and so council agreed with that. So that's been done there as well. Down near the Tancook Ferry in Front Harbor, so the small parcel of municipal land that's adjacent to the ferry wharf, we've rezone that or propose that to be parks and open space, which just it makes sense, I think, with the potential future use of that. And similarly, there's a very small parcel across Water Street on the inland side that was previously zoned waterfront residential, which didn't match the lot. It was an inland lot, it didn't have water frontage, so we've just reverted that to R2 to match the adjacent zones. The pieces that council hasn't seen, and this is a reflection or result of the discussion around the estate residential with the R1 going back to the 40,000 square foot per minimum lot size. We had talked about, but not with specifics, that there were a number of areas in the village that don't match those characteristics, and in some instances we've heard from property owners in those areas that have had difficulty developing because they're on a lot that is far below that minimum lot size and they're still stuck with 25-foot yard setbacks and they're unable to develop the lot because it's just too small. So there are two areas that we've proposed to rezone from estate residential, or R1 to R2. The first in the bottom left there would be sort of the block or section around Brunswick, Victoria, Regent Street, and Union. So again, those lots are, in many of them you can see are still in the original sort of grid subdivision from the original plot plan of the village, and that was the area where we had heard from a number of owners that were having difficulties developing based on their zoning. The lots do not meet the characteristics of the R1 zone, particularly with putting that minimum lot size back, and so that's why we're proposing those. Similarly, out on Pig Loop, Harborview, and Noss Point down to sort of where the Chester sewer plant is, that little section of orange, that originally had been zoned what's now R3, so the low-density residential. Then it was proposed to go to R1 when we had the minimum lot size reduced, but now with that reverting back to the larger, I think R2 is more appropriate for that zone. It more matches the characteristics. They're fairly small lots anyways, and generally already developed, and so that would be in keeping with that R2 zone. So those two areas we propose to zone as a result of the changes to the R1. Okay.
There.
Yeah, almost there. Yep. So what we've gone through so far were the land use bylaws and regulatory changes. These will be pretty quick. We've added some corresponding policy in a number of places, sometimes to speak to the regulations and other times just to bulk up some policy sections. So we have added a kind of in acceptance of the not being able to do the corner vision triangle, we have added some policy support to support council working with the province to address issues around private encroachment into public right-of-ways. That's both corner vision. It's also, cases where landscaping or boulders have been used to block off, but technically as part of the public right-of-way. So no regulations in there, but just general support for council to continue that work if they wish. We've revised some policy around telecommunications towers. I know Paul's come forward. He's working on that piece to do a policy for how we review and approve new telecommunication towers. So we've removed that reference to CRINs because we're basically no longer going to be working with them on those applications. We've added some policy support for the regulations for short-term rentals, which of course we will adjust accordingly to wherever we land with those. We've, and this is already out of date, gosh, we've added some policy support to encourage the province to complete and implement the Coastal Protection Act, which as we know earlier this week is not going to be happening, unfortunately. So that may be another area that we actually need to, or want to discuss it.
Just speaking to that, I think we received a letter from the minister. That'll be on a future council agenda. We'll look for some direction then on what council's next steps.
Right, yeah, thanks.
We've been waiting for them and they didn't decide to do nothing.
That's right. So added some policy support for the architectural controls and policies that would deal with if we had an incomplete development agreement when the plan was being approved, how that would work. Not wanting to shut somebody down who was truly working through an application process. We currently don't expect that to be the case. It's more or less just, I think, good language to have in the plan, be it for this plan review or future plan reviews.
Yeah, Tina?
Thank you. I especially like the first statement of the policy around private encroachment. I know that we talked about what may or may not be a parking problem in the village, so that may lighten that up a little bit. Yeah. We talk about parking and landscaping.
Yep.
Where it shouldn't be.
Yeah. And this would just essentially provide, council's intent that they do. It's on their radar, and they may,
perfect.
Take steps. Yeah. And this is where I said we may get into the part where things will change a little bit. But in terms of proposed engagement, presuming that council would like us to go back out with draft 2 to the public, and I guess just for information, it has been posted to our Voices and Choices page as of today because it's now the draft 2 is public. So what I would suggest this time is that we always try to get the word out, but we always hear that people have
didn't do enough.
Right. So I think what we should do this time, my proposal would be to do less meetings, but go above and beyond even where we would normally advertise for them. So I would suggest 1 or 2 sessions. I'm open to council's thoughts on that. I think we will probably request more staff support in terms of having facilitators,
Yep.
so that I'm not running the meeting and trying to
Yep.
pay attention to who's speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And then also certainly encourage council to attend if they're available, just to hear the discussion. In terms of how we advertise, we'll do all of our normal things, posters, social media, voices and choices, municipal email notifications, but in addition, I think we should do a household ad mail, so that will go to every household in the village.
You didn't get it, it's your fault.
Check.
And then probably look into some radio advertisements too, to just even more so get it out as good reminders. Like I said, we've posted the documents, so those are technically available now. And as has been referenced here a few times, I have let VPAC, Village Plan Advisory, know that we basically with all of those committees, we have them tentatively scheduled and we only hold them when there's business to attend to. So I've told them March 12th, I would expect to bring this material to them for discussion. And that would be a good chance for them to discuss some of these issues.
And we could bring this document to them as well.
Sure.
I wouldn't have to have those changes.
Right. Oh, yeah. I don't anticipate making those changes.
No, just tell them that this is what I heard.
We'll talk about these are the areas we want to look at. Yeah, absolutely.
Just want to make sure.
And then basically once we go through all that and have our public meeting, we would bring back draft 2 either for first reading or for direction to make some final changes.
For some decision.
Yeah. So this is just a sort of a rough calendar that I put together that could potentially outline things, but like I said, we may want to have some discussion here. I think potentially one idea based on the discussions this morning, maybe we would want to meet with VPAC and then come back to council before we go to the public, or maybe not. Or we can just identify short-term rentals, licensing bylaws, something we're going to look at, and architectural 2 and 12 for commercial buildings is something we're going to revisit. We could identify those as we go to VPAC and
Yeah, I just identify, tell them, this is council giving me direction on these items.
And really, I guess, considering everything we've gone through today, there's 2 items to look at. So I think that's a pretty good
At
list.
some point, we gotta just, we have to.
Yeah. So these, the VPAC ad is set. The VPAC meeting is set. The other would be just rough ideas to be confirmed, but that would be the thought. So I guess, does council feel strongly about, a single meeting, 2 meetings?
2 meetings is good in case somebody can't make the first.
Different days.
Give a chance.
2 in case or something, but that should be enough. Once we get, whatever. I mean, it's been going on for 4 years. People are reasonably well.
Right. So we could do, sometimes we do an afternoon and an evening.
Sometimes
So maybe we'll do 2 different days with one in the afternoon and one in the evening, and hopefully that would work. And then so we'll obviously circulate that schedule as soon as we got it. But I would be looking to do those hopefully in March or early April. I know Councillor Wells is away early April, so we wouldn't bring anything back until after that.
Just for one meeting.
Yeah. And so we could aim to come back in sort of mid-April to get the final direction as to whether it's, we're going to make those changes, and then I'd have some more information on what those might look like, those options for the bylaw and that kind of thing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great.
Glad you're the planner and I'm not. The public part's over.
No, it just, in fact, March 12th is March break. I just say that.
Oh.
March 12th would be March break for a lot of people.
A lot of people might be gone.
It's for the village, it's for the village.
Well, and
So that's planning advisory meeting.
Yeah, that's planning.
So it's open to the public, but
They don't come.
What happened at the last time we brought it to VPAC was it kind of became a public forum. There were a lot of members in the gallery and the committee sort of turned the meeting over to the public.
Wow.
I've suggested that not happen this time, that this is the opportunity for the committee members to discuss. And
Therefore,
unless there's direction to do another one, this will be their only opportunity to discuss. So I've suggested that that it's definitely, anybody is welcome to come and listen, but there may not be time to address the committee at that meeting.
The public meetings will be 2 separate public meetings outside of the meeting.
Exactly, yeah, so there'll be 2.
And then there will be a public hearing.
And then a final public